Welcome to the Vocal Lab podcast with your hosts Shelby Rollins and Jason Catrone, bringing you the best from the music industry. Get ready for first-class conversations packed with exclusive techniques and transformative insights, all designed to help you reach your top note. Hey everyone, Jason Catrone here. Welcome to the Vocal Lab podcast.
And I'm Shelby Rollins.
Oh, hey, Shelby, you're with us. And here in the middle, we have the lovely and wonderful Angela Abbott. Welcome to the podcast, Angela.
Hey, everyone.
Angela and I have been friends for 2 years now,
Yep.
a little more than. We met at the infamous Soho House over a Sunday
Of
brunch.
course
I
you
know.
did. Yeah, of course.
Shocking that we would do that. Shocking we would be there at the pool, by the bar, or anywhere at any given time, right? But no, we became really great friends, and Angela has a very amazing history in music, starting with her family and kind of leading us up to today. But you, I will let you tell the kind of general background here, but you have spent a lot of your time in the DSP world and the corporate side of music, but you also intersect with the creative side. So yeah, just jump in, let the lovely people know you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I guess my journey kind of takes 3 different courses. My family's always been a music family. I grew up in California, and my father was part of the original kind of Tower Records crew. So
cool.
Back in the 70s and 80s, he opened up a lot of the stores in California. And then they asked him, their corporate headquarters is in West Sacramento, and so they asked him to go get a degree if he wanted to join the corporate team. And so he ended up getting a degree in IT and was their VP of Information Technology.
That's cool.
Which
Wow.
back then is ironic because it's not streaming the way you think about it today. It's
Right.
like selling physical CDs and
It's
records.
like holding it in your hand. Like
Oh,
this
yeah.
is like, whoa.
Yeah.
Those of you who don't know Tower Records out there, that was before
yeah.
your time. Just Google it. It was a big, huge part of music. And a primary reason so many people are in music today was because of those record stores, especially Tower.
Yeah, definitely. And, he was in charge of kind of the point of sale system, so took it internationally, had a lot of exposure. I mean, going to their annual conferences, seeing Celine.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Dude,
Celine Dion when
Stop.
she was 14.
No way.
Yeah,
What?
and she came in for one of their annual conferences.
You've got to be kidding me. I didn't know this.
Yeah, she's very, very young, and that was, it was kind of like, that was the moment that everyone in the room was like, whoa. And, it's like, streaming companies now throwing their fan
Shelby.
events and things like that.
I'm unwell. Her documentary comes out tomorrow.
Yes.
By the time this
Yeah.
airs, this will be past
Yeah.
old news. But I am like waiting with tissues
Yeah.
to watch this. I cannot wait to see this.
Well, the
documentary.
reason we know each other is
Yeah.
because of a really great friend of mine, Vanessa Campagna, who is an amazing songwriter, artist here in Nashville. And they had been friends for several years. And so they were having brunch. I was at the gym. She's like, come meet my friend Angela and family. They just moved to town. But Vanessa has a song on this documentary
Yep, who I
that
am.
you are connected to now because you work with Vanessa. This is crazy.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, so Shelby, you can have her autograph after
I'm
this.
so excited.
It's so wild because I feel like working with Vanessa was like a long time of, friendship. And then she was like, I need someone
Yeah.
in my corner. So, yeah, when she called me and said that it's Win Stark's song that she wrote
Right.
called Who I Am, and when she told me that it was picked for the documentary, I was like, this must be better than even, your top line
Yeah.
EDM track with Armin last year or
Oh,
putting out
totally.
your own artist release because that is her all-time hero. So
It's like peak, I can die happy
Yes.
kind of moment.
Yeah, it's
for
a
sure.
huge full circle moment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Huge full circle. So, but back to you. Sorry. I had to
no,
interject.
it's fine. So that's the Tower gig, and I think like growing up around that, I was just it was just kind of normal to me. I didn't, seeing the Rolling Stones and Don Was at the Sunset Boulevard Tower Records to me when I was like 14, I just thought that was normal.
Wow. Didn't they used
so
to
funny.
do concerts on top of the stores, right?
Yeah.
That was like a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, unfortunately, Tower went bankrupt because the internet came along,
Right.
and companies like Best Buy and Virgin and then Napster, if you will.
Oh my gosh. Have you started to watch this documentary that has now come out on Amazon Prime? I believe it's How Music Got Free. And it's basically about and Tower Records is a big part of this documentary.
Okay.
It's kind of the story of like the downfall of the physical
Physical
copy
product.
into because of Napster and all of these and MP3 and basically the origins of DSPs. But it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's so interesting. Have you watched this yet?
I haven't watched that yet, and I do want to check it out. And it's funny because somebody told me to watch The Playlist, I think.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, that one's on Netflix maybe, but I thought, and that one was really interesting too because the take that, Spotify was kind of the originator, but frankly, in my opinion, I worked at Pandora before Spotify went on demand, which is part of the segue after I had a different career in my professional life. I was actually an executive recruiter, retained executive search consultant. So I helped VCs and C-level, CEOs build out their C-suite.
In music or just in the business world?
Just in tech. So I lived in the
okay.
Bay Area during that time.
Yeah.
And so, which would teach me a lot later, like that matchmaking skill, that understanding different business models, that, understanding what executives are looking for in their team to drive the business forward. Like that would all come into play later in my deal making. But long story short, I ended up, so I worked at Google for a hot second in recruiting and then got recruited to go to Pandora. And so I went there and I did that from 200 employees to 2,000 employees. So I was there during a big bulk of the growth.
And what'd you do at Pandora?
So at Pandora, the first 6 months I was a recruiter, and then post that, I ended up taking the last spot on this business affairs and music licensing team, which we were responsible for doing the first direct licensing deals with rights holders so that we could have on-demand features.
Oh, wow.
So just to kind of
crazy.
oversimplify it, because I know this is a very complicated topic and we could get really deep.
And that might have gone over
Yeah.
people's heads. Like when you really stop and think about it, that's groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It was the first time. So Pandora was known for being more of a ad-supported or radio service.
Right.
And again, just to oversimplify, there are rates set by the Copyright Royalty Board for that type of service. But the minute you want to offer on-demand features or a search and play whatever you want, whenever you want with no ads, you're now entering into a direct negotiation with all the rights holders, and it's a free market. So you're negotiating for, best possible rates, but also the rights holders want, guarantees around okay, well, how are you going to market the service? How many subscribers are you going to get? Who's going to pay for that? And so,
and those rights holders in this context are the songwriters, right?
It's the major record labels
Right.
and the publishers, which then downstream from that is the songwriters and the sound recording artists. So, so that was the first time we ever did those deals. And
Wow, that's crazy.
the leader of that team basically was like, it's a long story. We don't probably have time for it. It's a fun story, but I went to South by Southwest on my own as a recruiter and basically came back with the last role. She was building that team from 2 to 13. And I delivered an artist to the live stream booth at the Pandora House during Hip Hop Day, and everyone was really excited. And she was like, "Do you want this job on this team?" So,
Oh, wow.
it's a fun. It was Anderson .Paak and Too Short.
Oh, wow, no
basically,
way. That's so cool.
Anderson was about to go on stage. It was 2016. He wasn't well known yet.
Yeah, that was during his blow up.
Yeah, and I had met Too Short's team, and we had our hip hop curator on the live stream, and I was like, "Oh, it'd be so cool if Too Short was here." And they were kind of talking about Anderson's performance, and they were like, "Can you get him here?" So I just hustled that, and then we got back to Oakland, and she was like, "Do you want a spot on this team?" So yeah,
That's awesome.
that's how that happened, and so I did that. Lots of fun projects. That was during the time that Prince's catalog came to streaming, and so I did a big campaign for that I did kind of on my own, honestly. And then, I moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
And then I joined the
glad
title
you did.
team, did that for a couple of years, and here I am.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what do you think in your experience maybe for a minute, let's go down this DSP route? Because even to me today, as much as I've heard about it, as many little seminars I've sat in on it, it is still one of the most confusing components of the music industry.
And such an important one for people to know more about and understand, be educated on.
Yeah. And so I don't even know where to really start with because it's such a huge topic in of itself. But
How about what's a DSP?
yeah, maybe start there. It's a great idea.
Yes, DSP is a digital service provider. And what that means is really, I mean, it's the tech platform that hosts and streams the music to the end user.
Like Spotify.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is cool because you started as a child being, surrounded by the physical product aspect of music.
Yeah.
And then somehow life took you into the future of that, which is streaming services. That's really a cool thread of your life.
Yeah, you grew with
know?
the industry where I feel like so many people, like how Tower is no more, right? Because it was unable to sort of evolve with the changing of the tides, but yet you did, right? You grew up through the physical copy and now into the DSP world.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been passionate about music.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I have a soft spot in my heart for understanding how businesses work. And I think the unfortunate truth about the music streaming business is that in some cases people don't feel like it's a fair, equitable means of making money. On the flip side, when you think about like the switch from physical to digital and all the piracy that was happening, it's like we have improved leaps and bounds. So yeah, it's been a wild journey making that transition.
Yeah, and that's a valid point from someone on that side of the table. Having worked in that part of the industry, in anything and everything, there's always going to be people who are screaming for more money, and that's fair. That's we see it with service industry in all regards, and I think there's validity in all of that. But it's also a good reminder to step back and just also accept where it is right now.
Yeah.
And try to always promote what you want or push for what you want.
Yeah.
But at least also be thankful that you're making some money today because 5 years ago you weren't, or 10 years, however long it was, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think when you think about physical copies, like obviously they're $14.99, $19.99.
Yeah.
So it's like they are making more per sale. And that's why the new era is sort of this like, I don't want to call it anti-streaming, but it's like, what can we do outside of the streaming ecosystem?
Right.
Selling merch, selling tickets, any kind of exclusive fan club. And I think, so like my passion lies at the intersection of music and technology. And so I'm always evaluating what other kind of tech platforms outside of streaming, creatives can make money on. But I think, streaming alone is not its own business, but there is a little bit of more of a democratization now where people can upload, music and anyone can get in the game.
Totally.
So
Anyone.
I feel like that's what streaming's also brought to the table.
Right.
Sure. And I know you do a lot of consulting with new artists, young artists, established artists in this space. What are some like maybe valuable tips for people listening that you help people on without giving away the whole, shebang?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it away. I mean, I feel like there's so many useful tips out there and people who have more experience than I do. Like a lot of my experience comes from understanding the deal framework between, say, a major label and a DSP, right? And I think where that gets complicated, I was going to mention this a little bit earlier, is, again, going oversimplified. Content costs, so the cost of doing business for a streaming platform are like easily 65%, 55 to 65% out the door. Okay, so that's how much they already have to pay to rights holders, who then pay the songwriters and the artists. So a lot of people think like, oh, the DSP's making all that. I'm paying them
I always
10 to
kinda thought
15 bucks a month. They're making that whole thing. No, like 65% of that goes, 75% sometimes
Okay,
goes
you
to
taught
the
me
rights
something.
holders.
Wow, okay.
So
That's
the
cool.
margin is very small for a streaming platform. And then if you think about the 25 to 30% that's left, they've got operational costs. Like, how are they supposed to invest in marketing? It's anyway.
And just, I can't even imagine what it costs to keep up like a Spotify or Apple Music
storage.
Just the platform itself, because
the
it
tech
functions all the time.
infrastructure.
It doesn't go down. Maybe has Spotify ever gone down or
No, but there's
iTunes?
I
Apple
don't
Music?
know. I don't
know.
know.
It's like I'm always amazed. Like we just take for granted, like we go on for an Uber or to book a plane ticket.
Yeah.
The facilitation of making that function consistently, it boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Right? It really does.
Yeah.
So back to your point, I never knew that until you said that right now, but it makes perfect sense because what we hear from the big bad media is, the owners of Spotify are billionaires and they're taking all this money from artists.
Artists make point zero zero
They're
zero
billionaires because they have
1 cent on a stream.
Global company that is making hundreds of millions of billions of dollars a day. I don't know how much a day. That 65% is going back to facilitate it.
Yeah,
at least.
And another way to look at it is like,
that's cool.
If there's 100 million subscribers on, say, Spotify, for example, their rates are going to be lower, right? Because they've negotiated better deals because they have more volume of money coming in.
It's like
That's
any
why
other
it's
business.
the market share pie, it's the pro rata share.
Wow.
And we
Economics
start
101.
getting into all of that. Yeah. But back to your question on pro tips, because I totally glazed over that, but I wanted to make sure that we got a few more basics about streaming out there. I think, I'm not going to say anything groundbreaking here, but going back to the fact that it's really easy for anyone to get music out there. So, like, my tips are generally real basic formula here. If you're a new artist and you want to get started and you think you have a good audio product, because let's face it, at the end of the day, or a good song, if you will, in the room with songwriters and artists, you can put it out there. There are independent distribution funnels that you can go through. Those independent distribution funnels also have deals with these DSPs.
Sure.
And I'm sure you've seen it, but you can go into a DistroKid and you can, it will show you all the services you can upload your music to. So it's like, once you get in the habit of just getting the music out there, you can do that for, I generally say 6 to 12 months is a good amount of time to sort of test. And then within that time frame, you're trying to pick up showcases, do listening sessions for other professionals in the space. So if you have a network of people who are managers or work at a label or are just friends who have a good ear or good design taste, like sit them down and be like, hey, I'm working on this. What do you think? Social media, obviously your best friend. Not a marketing strategy, but something you need to, be consistent with on.
I like what you said there because we all talk about social media all the time, especially on this podcast, because it's such a big thing of our lives now. But you just said best friend. And it's a mental flip that can happen where you do view it as your best friend and not your enemy.
Yeah.
And I think way too many artists, myself included at times, see it as more of an enemy. Like, I got to do this. I don't want to make this real today, but that'd be like saying I don't want to hang out with my best friend because you're spending time with it. Anything we spend time with, we have to have the relational ability to see goodness in that. Otherwise, why are we doing it at all?
I think we have an unhealthy view of it in part also because we consume so much and don't create enough. And so the consumption is actually quite toxic to our minds and our psyche, so that then when it goes into creator mode, we're like, it's not going to be good enough. It's going to suck in comparison to this or something like that, And so we already have this negative bent toward it.
Yeah.
So we consume way too much content.
I think that's like hands down one of probably the biggest sticking point for creatives or even somebody who wants to promote their own business. And if you think about, your artist career, your songwriting career, you're like a business, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to promote yourself. And it is very stressful. Like I don't even talk direct to camera if I can avoid it.
Yeah.
On social media, but yet when I put up a post and I'm like, put a poll of like, do you want to see more content like this or not? It's like 100% yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like just because of our own insecurities or our own things.
Yeah.
But I do have to push artists. But I think that the third piece of this, which is an investment, and I understand not everyone has the money to spend on their creative careers, but I think finding people who want to help you out with creating content, social media strategy, paid ads, digital marketing, and then booking shows. Like it's pretty, I don't want to say it's pretty simple. Like it's hard for creatives. I don't know how they do it, but I do know that there's a lot of different ways to kind of slice the formulas, but it's also ever evolving. Like it used
is.
to be
Right.
like everyone's releasing on a Friday. But now if everyone's releasing on a Friday and, Post Malone or Taylor Swift's putting out a track on Friday, maybe you should release on Thursday.
Yeah.
So I think there are some tips out there that even I've read that I'm like, ooh, let's try that,
Because it is a trial and error thing. You're trying to, experiment and explore what the possibilities are with anything. If we were trying to, make microphones, we're going to dabble with that. And I think it's all too common and easy for, again, the ego to come in and be like, I've made this song. It's a hit. Everyone around me says it's a hit. I'm going to put it out there. And then it's like, oh, only 200 people listened to it yesterday.
100%.
And then you get deflated.
Yeah.
And then you're like, can I keep doing this? That's when the mind starts to just go crazy.
Yeah.
And what you said that I think, something that stuck out to me recently over the past several months, Shelby and I have talked a lot about this, is bringing people onto your team to do things for you, especially things you don't want to do. So like we've upped our social media games by bringing people in to help with that.
Yeah.
Because not only does it free up time to just create,
Yeah.
but it also gives us the ability to not have to put that pressure on ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, it
and
was
someone
like the
else
best
can do
investment
it.
I made in my business was like hiring a social
And
media
almost
manager.
anyone,
Exactly.
if you pay attention to any of these things, especially on Instagram, like how to, 10x, whatever you're doing, there is always a point of making a major investment of going all in.
Always.
And if you're very serious about your art form, if you're a songwriter or an artist especially, taking a moment to go all in, spend that money on your coach, on your production, on songwriting lessons if you need them, whatever you need, then creating a great product and then still continuing to invest with someone who can consult with you, ad spend. You do that for a certain time period, you're way more likely to succeed at this than just casually dropping stuff because you think it's great.
Yeah, that's inconsistent too. It's
Yeah,
like
totally.
you can't expect to have a lot of measurable growth with like one great choice that you made one time, because you are what you do every day, not like one time.
Sure.
Yeah, and the virality aspect is so few and far between.
So
I
few and
think
far
that's
between.
what people are like sort of
Banking on, right?
Yeah,
It's like playing the
exactly.
lottery.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool. If that happens, like, great. We'll deal with it when we'll cross that bridge if it happens. But in the meantime, if you want to be, a sound recording artist, like you want to put out your projects, and songwriting's very different, right? Like that's another angle. But you have to have the music to put out, and you have to believe in it, and you have to find a fan wherever you can within your friend group.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
that's a
I
good
like
point.
that.
Because it's like everyone's like, oh, well, I think I have fans in this market or that market. But like if you have very low numbers, you won't know yet. It's really about finding one person here and there who will advocate for you and promote on your behalf. I mean, anytime I see a great band, independent band or singer-songwriter, I'm always texting friends like, hey, have you checked this person out? Have you checked that person
Right.
out? So find somebody who does that in each like friend group, or one person for everything you're at. Just find one.
It's the power of referrals and relationships.
It really is.
And
What
it's
are
still
some-
probably the greatest discoverability of music still.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's how it still really happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some like must know things about like probably the DSP world for an artist who is starting to release music? They're already putting things out there independently. What are some things that you feel like people don't know they need to know?
I mean, I guess having worked at two, the product's always changing. And I think that can be challenging for the creative side, because they have to adapt, the technology platforms have to adapt to, user behavior. And so if the population of people, consuming audio content on a streaming platform is getting younger and younger, right? They have different user habits than when these streaming platforms started. So the streaming platforms have been around for 20 plus years now. And so the tech infrastructure changes. It could be whether the search and play, bubble where you go to search something is being optimized in a certain way. And so features like that change periodically. And so when you're talking to your fan base on social media platforms or in an audience or whatever, you're saying like, hey, go find me here, go follow me there, whatever, when you're doing liners, like make sure you understand what the latest features of each streaming platform are.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know that.
Is that just through Google searches?
Yeah,
The best way to do it?
yeah, a lot of the main like major streaming platforms have their like artist tools, right?
Right,
So
sure.
whether it's Pandora Artist Marketing Platform or Spotify for Artists or Apple for Artists, they all have those platforms, and they have really great like tutorials and blogs, and anytime they push an update, there's usually an article about it. And I think this is what gets very overwhelming for creatives too.
Sure.
Right? So it's like
course.
if you have a team around you who can kind of let you know what's happening, what changes are coming. If you work with a great distribution partner, usually they'll send out like a newsletter or some kind of email update and say, hey, we notice this change on TikTok. Make sure you've snagged your, claimed your official artist profile and, pinned your music to the top. Like all these
Got it.
different features and things are really important. So I would say that's something that's
Staying on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That can be really overwhelming. I agree. Because creatives aren't the ones who are really thinking about that kind of stuff so much. And it can feel like, oh, good, it's just one more thing I've got to do.
Yeah.
But that's part of the game. It's like part of the
Yeah.
hustle.
I also think there are a lot of really cool programs that people aren't aware of. I think we put all of our eggs in one basket with the biggest DSP or the second biggest DSP.
Sure.
We definitely do. You said something at the beginning of this podcast where, I forget how you said it, but you referred to streaming as, at least the way I interpreted it, was as one of the more minor things an artist should be focused on.
Well,
I think what you meant by that, at least what I took from it, was don't put all your eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to drop a song and I'm going to get 1 million streams. Like you need to be focused on all the other stuff to help push that to what you want it to be.
Yeah, and
Did I hear that right?
Totally. And I think it all comes down to like what your goals are.
Yeah.
Right? So if your goal is like, I don't need to make $1 million a year. I'm fine making $50K a year
Yeah.
and not working a restaurant
Oh,
job.
y'all don't get my paychecks, do you?
or whatever.
Yeah, no, yeah.
If you can figure out what your, if your goal is like, I just want to make music.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have a side hustle job. Great. Okay, then streaming alone as a new artist isn't going to cut it,
Right.
especially when you have to make
Right.
investments,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what things can you do? So I think I was talking more about like the revenue angle.
Yeah. And what
but
were some of those
still-
resources that you were like
Oh,
starting
I
to
just
mention?
think like selling merch, like, trying to do some shows, paid shows, and building also exclusive, like behind the scenes content platforms. There's a lot of those around. So yeah, I think streaming is great, but it's one piece of it.
Yeah.
So
How do you see it or foresee it changing in the future, especially with AI, all
Yeah.
of that? Like, how do you think that might affect streaming as we know it now in 2024?
I think that streaming has become a little bit of a utility at this point. I think it's very like we need it, or we want it, I guess. It's at our fingertips, as you explained earlier.
Yep.
And it's like I put it on when I'm in the car. I put it on when I'm getting ready in the bathroom. I use it in a Peloton workout or in a workout class, So I think it's like it's become kind of like this, it's at a point where everyone who in the world pretty much almost who can afford to have a paid streaming subscription has one.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we've maxed out the opportunity to grow from that regard.
And scale with new subscribers? Sure.
Exactly. So people could be switching if they like something better, if there's glitches on a platform,
Yeah.
they don't like the way it's curated. But I think one of the ways we're seeing AI today, especially in streaming, is in the curation aspect. So I know everyone gets crazy about their Spotify day list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of that is algorithmic. It's not like
Sure.
there's a human curator being like, oh, we think you'll like to listen to this at this time of day.
Right.
Like that is all AI
Yeah.
driven, or even, it's like, again, define AI, even if you have your own in-house, you're not using a third-party AI platform, but you have your own in-house, large language models is what they're called, LLMs, who have this incredible amount of data over 20 years of your behavior on Spotify.
It's sort of terrifying, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But I mean,
They've just been watching me since birth.
Yeah.
It's no big
same
deal.
Basically.
same with Instagram,
Yeah,
same with,
right.
and it's like,
Same
so
with
I
the
think,
cameras on the streets we don't even know we're there.
yeah.
I mean,
I don't
it's
think we
like-
should talk about it.
Yeah. It is.
But yes, let's talk about it.
It's like depressing.
Podcast over.
But I think that's probably like one of the biggest areas that we've already seen it, but it's almost been seamless.
Yeah.
Because these streaming platforms, they're all like, even Pandora, the radio algorithm, you're like, how does it know I want to hear that next, right? It's been happening for 20 years already.
Right.
It's just that now it's an area of focus, and there are third-party platforms that are sort of more in your face about like, hey, you can use AI to do X, Y, and Z. But like production tools, I'm sure editing, things like that's all AI.
Right. Right.
I think the controversial piece of AI is sort of the publicity, right? The name, image, likeness, the things that have happened with the fake Drake and all of that. So
yeah.
And that's
wild.
evolving quickly.
it is.
Right, and-
Yeah.
Going
So
to be.
now-
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you mentioned, I thought this was an interesting point that I hadn't really considered, if streaming services are now like a utility. What do you think is sort of on the other side of, or do you think that will change? Is this sort of the permanent place?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't really answer
streaming?
that directly. I mean, again, I think user behavior will always change. I think you're seeing some of the economic impact of, the audio book and podcasts, like bundling stuff that comes up with new models, the artist-centric model. So I think you're going to see some, evolution continued. I think you'll see more AI in the programming. But on the other side of that, I mean, it's going to look like, are there a la carte services that are like, oh, you only listen to classical music. Okay, here's $4.99 for all you can eat classical. But if you want to add in, pop and hip hop and whatnot, now you're back in the $20. Maybe we'll see some split off of some very niche streaming services. Other than that, I think we're in the, fortunately or unfortunately, the social media game. So it's like, will streaming services have more social media features embedded in them for music discovery and more like user engagement? Or will social media platforms have more streaming elements to them? So when you think about like TikTok exploring in other markets their own streaming platform, are we going to start to use TikTok for more than just social media creation?
Wow.
I'm tired thinking about that.
It's a lot. It's
It is a
That's-
lot.
That's why
It's important to,
That's why we
it's
all
important to think about, but
hang
it just
out
made
at the
me
bar.
tired.
Yeah. I mean, and I can really like sadly get a crowd glazed over with all of these details because I'm like fascinated by it.
Yeah.
But
That's why we had you here, though.
But that has
Just
to be
'cause
a
your
challenge for
expertise
you.
in it.
Challenge for you at times doing
to pivot to the creative side.
Yeah, but well, yes, that not only that, but like you do a lot of like not podcasts. You do a lot of like lectures and speaking
yeah.
engagements. So your topic alone is very like it could put people to sleep fast because it's just over everyone's head.
Or it stresses them out.
Or stresses them out and they'll check out. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's got to be a little.
And I think for creatives, like that's the hard part is like deciphering the information to the creative population
Yeah.
of why they should care,
Yeah.
right? Because at the end
We
of the
deal
day,
with that.
Yeah.
Why should you care about your vocal training or
Totally.
whatever? Yeah.
yeah.
But that's had to be a really fun process for you as well, moving to Nashville and taking all this experience, especially being on a more corporate side, and now blending what you do to also consult and work with creatives.
Yeah.
And that's
right?
what you said you were kind of the most passionate about was kind of this stuff, this technological
Yeah.
side, and then marrying that with the creativity
Yeah.
and with the artist, the intersection of those two things.
Do you have like a cool scenario that's happened recently where you've been able to take your knowledge from this space and use it with an artist that you've combined forces with in some way.
Yeah. I'm working with an artist, and I'm glad that you asked that because I was going to mention this earlier when we were kind of getting into the tips. And we were talking about the different artist tools that are available from the streaming platforms directly to the artists. I've been friends with this woman. Her name's Abrina. She's an R&B artist in Los Angeles, even though she's not Nashville based, but we have a long-term a long-distance relationship. But we started working together, and I think when artists start working with me, it's really like I just need someone to like sit with me in these conversations,
right?
Because I'm focused on like what I'm gonna look like in the studio and like what the lyrics are gonna be in my next track. Like I'm not thinking about search engine optimization and how many times a day I need to post and if my music's been uploaded correctly, and so I kind of jump in on that level. But with Abrina, I've known her for 7 years, and she's been really hustling hard in LA, and she finally got to a point where she's making some of the best music, because of this amazing producer that she started working with, and this amazing producer who believes in her and is working with her. And one of the things I told her was like, I know that platforms like Tidal or platforms like Deezer or SoundCloud might be smaller, but they can still be effective and they still have tools that are helpful. And so I had her sign up for Tidal Artist Home, and I was like, hey, they're running a contest. Like, if you go and sign up and then you opt in, you could get picked for this contest.
Oh, wow.
And the contest was like a lot of paid media behind a spot and a track that came out of a recording session with Jermaine Dupri. And so basically they have this feature called collaborations. And if you go and sign up and you opt into the collaborations feature, it matches you. It's sort of like a dating, profile match. And the thing is, like for Instagram, when you DM people, you don't know if you're going to hear back or not. And some people have their settings on that are like, don't contact me. But this is like two people in music, right? And so Jermaine went through and listened to a bunch of the matches and picked her and this guy, Reggie Becton, who's also amazing. And they got to go to Atlanta and like sit in the studio with Jermaine for a couple days. And they have a track coming out of that session called Nostalgia. And it's really great. I'm excited about it. So, so I mean,
really
literally
cool.
just saying, hey, have you thought about X? Can you go do Y? And she was like on it, did it.
Didn't take like any effort just to opt in to be a part of something, and then she got picked.
Exactly.
Because she was ready with great content and things like that, working with a great producer, starting to put out great music.
Yeah.
And we were actually talking about this with somebody else. When the opportunity meets the preparation, the timing is right.
Yeah.
But the actual opportunity that was presented that you brought to her attention was pretty easy. Like low-hanging fruit, right? To just go and...
It probably took her 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the places that can take her from here.
Oh, yeah.
That's everyone's always, again, they're looking at Apple Music, Spotify, Tiny Desk. Everyone's always focusing on, by and large, on the big picture or big kahunas of music.
Right.
But there are so many opportunities below that actually could be the door you need to open.
And I think it's timing and trajectory.
Yeah.
You can't expect to start tomorrow.
No.
And I mean, if there's a virality moment, like, okay, so those exceptions don't apply here.
Right.
But playing catch up is always horrible.
But you can't start on day one and expect like, okay, I want a record deal. I want a publishing deal. I want, or like, why is, they're not booking me here. And it's like, well, maybe they've done the analysis and you're not, you're not going to be able to sell that room out. Like there's reasons. So I think, get people around you who are also honest. I think it's hard. Like, I'm a very honest person, and I found I have to be honest in the right time, because you don't want to be super honest right after a performance if it was terrible. Right. But maybe like the next day, you know, you want to be like, hey, how did you feel about that? Right?
Yeah.
And take their temperature before you say it.
Talking to your child, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're not telling them, then I feel like you are doing them a disservice. So I think, that it's like I'm kind of that person. I'm always going to be very like direct and honest, but that's not what we were talking about. But just thought you all should know.
No, I
Everything
love
I'm
that.
saying here is true.
She is an honest person, you guys. What just
Also very rare in the music industry.
yeah, or just in
It's
humanity.
unfortunate.
It just popped in my mind, but like, what are you? I know you love music. Like, one thing from hanging out at Angela's house on a Friday or Saturday night, which is always a great time, because another amazing chef in front of us, she can cook like crazy.
Amazing.
I do
Yeah,
love to cook.
her parties are amazing. But there's always music at your parties.
Yep.
And typically we'll be there, the night will go on, we'll have had some great wine and food and convo and whatever, and it always ends up sitting outside or inside if it's too cold on the couches, just firing off song after song.
Yeah.
Everyone takes a turn. And it's just the most fun because we experience music for what music is really all about. And we get these moods, we get these feelings, and we come up with the conversations. I'm like, oh my God, I remember this when I was like, in college and this. And it's one of my favorite things of being your friend are those moments because they're just really special. And so
I would like
my
to
question
now
is,
be your friend
I
and
know,
come
right?
to these nights.
We need to
I
invite
have not
her.
Yeah,
on
you
our
have to be
next.
invited.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
well, yeah, definitely.
Putting that out there.
But
You're invited.
But the question that was coming to mind is because I know you're a music lover. What are you excited about in the future of music? Is there something that you see coming or you hope comes? That's a big question. But
I don't know if it's what I hope comes, but what I'm excited about, there's a couple of things that I'm excited about that I'm starting to realize. I don't know if it's just what I've been listening to lately or if it's sort of like having this macro strategic, like business-minded personality in the music industry. But I listen to a lot of electronic music, actually. And I feel like, and since living in Nashville, more country music. And I feel like the blend of like pop remixes in EDM and country / pop like tracks that have been coming to the forefront. I'm really excited about it because I feel like it's finally, I've always been into electronic music, but I feel like it's kind of more palatable now in terms of like mainstream now. So I guess I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the genre blend. I'm excited about trying to support different women in music. I'm
it's a big passion of yours.
I'm a co-chair of partnerships and development for the Global Women in Music Organization. So not only on the creative side, but also the business side, I like to support female artists. So I'm excited about those two.
Yeah.
I think the EDM piece of that, not that this was necessarily a topic for today, but I think one of the reasons it's kind of gotten more palatable was, I think the word that you used, is one, the samples have come such a long way.
Yes.
I remember, probably 12 years ago or so, I think it was Keith Urban. I want to say it was Keith Urban, was one of the first artists in country music that I heard on the radio starting to use some samples, some EDM type stuff in his music. And I was like, bleh. I didn't like it. Sorry. I just didn't. And I think it sounded too on the nose, kind of cheesy. And I was like, this rips away from the authenticity of country. It feels more like live, real instruments and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
I thought the drum tracks in it were kind of bad. I don't remember what it was. But, and I'm not trying to throw him under the bus because, Keith, if you're listening, I'd like to have you on the podcast sometime. But
Yes,
what
please,
I thought
Keith.
was brilliant about his choice to do that now in retrospect and in hindsight is he was such a pioneer in that. And now you've got things like Post Malone and Morgan Wallen
Yeah, it's so cool.
doing, collaborations. And I hear it all the time now in country music, and it works.
Yeah.
But somebody had to put something out there first.
Yeah.
Who had to sort of be like, I have this idea. I think this could actually work. And while I didn't like it at the time, I actually do like it now.
Yeah.
And it's not because he did a bad job. It's because he blazed a trail. And he did something that was a little bit different that I was not used to hearing. And now here we are, fast forward like a decade later.
Yeah.
And people are using it left and right. And it's sounding a lot better.
Well, I have a very unpopular opinion.
Let's hear your hot take.
So I feel like all the good music's already been made. And so because of that statement, which is a very bold statement, and I say that like jokingly. Obviously, there's
I don't disagree.
Still amazing music being made out there, but I think the point is back to the samples. It's like some of the a lot of the 90s hip hop, they were using samples. De La Soul was using vinyl samples.
Yeah, that's not new.
No, it's not new. But I think what's interesting is like I was literally listening to this new Eminem song called Houdini. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have.
And it uses the Abracadabra song as a sample. And I was like, whoa, this is really interesting. And actually, the whole first like few bars are literally an old song of his in lyricism. And I think, on the EDM side, like I was listening to a Fred Again track that had Chica and Anderson .Paak on it. And I was like, oh, this is rad. But it's like bringing like drum and bass lines to the forefront, to like the pop mainstream, And so again, these are musical things that those of us who have been around have already been around. But I think like features, remixes, collaborations, like we're pretty much everyone's kind of reaching for blended audience numbers or a different style of music to try to what's a fast hook that's going to get people in. And so I think and AI is going to become a big part of this as well.
100%. And what I love about it is the sheer fact that like as we've gotten closer together because of technology, even though we are kind of more alone and individual, it's a weird dichotomy there, but the world has gotten smaller, as we know. Hopefully, we're becoming more and more colorblind in every way. And so I think it's really cool that music has really started to become more genre-less. And really blend that, because the exposure that... I'm just a huge proponent of great music getting to everyone's ears. Right? And to your point, I really do believe as well, like the 90s, it was at the beginning days of the end of great music, in my opinion. And it's not just because that was like the music I really came to life to, but
contrarian take. Has everybody said that though? Have like our parents said that too? All the good music has been made.
There is
60s rock and roll.
Some truth to that for sure.
And maybe the reality is like nothing is really new ever.
Nothing.
Right? Since creation, which I believe in, I don't know that anything has ever been new that hasn't already actually been made. It's an iteration.
It's just the way
it's an inspired by. It's an iteration. And so it's like, is my art bringing value or more noise?
Yeah, something new and refreshing,
true.
Even if it's inspired by.
Yeah.
I use this analogy a lot. Like this has been here since the beginning of time.
This being a phone, if you're not watching.
Yeah, the iPhone. Thank you. This iPhone has been here since the beginning of time. It just took time for someone's brains to
manifest
into this, what we now have as an iPhone. And wow, how that one thing changed history. And there's music that's going to happen that will change history from here on out. And more things that we will all be pontificating over and being like, oh, I don't want to do this or that. Or all goes back to great music, great art, and having a love for that and how it makes the world go round. That's what's so fun about it.
I mean,
and then we go back to a dinner party at your house, and it's like, here we are again. We don't have to worry about posting today. We're just going to enjoy this music.
I think that's so important. I mean, that's why I work in music, and I could go get a job doing something completely different, but...
And get paid more money.
I moved to Nashville, after being in California my entire life, because I wanted to spend more time in recording studios. I wanted to spend more time with songwriters and producers and try to understand the way that Nashville... Because the music business in Nashville is very different from the creative side than it is in LA or New York or London or wherever, right? So, I was very interested in that, and I'm glad I made the move. And I love listening to music and cooking, and you'll be invited to my next dinner party.
Woo-hoo!
Well, we're glad you made the move, because that meant you were sitting in this seat today. Because probably wouldn't know you otherwise. So I'm very glad you're here.
Crazy.
We covered a lot today.
We did. This has been fantastic. Let the lovely people out there know how they can reach you.
Oh, sure. Well, my Instagram is at the Lady Abbott, ABBOTT.
We'll post your anything else you want us to on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, always happy to chat.
Need some creative services? I'm sure you're available.
Yep. Definitely.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thanks for
Angela.
being here,
Yeah,
Angela.
thanks for having
Such
me.
good stuff.
Once again, the amazing Angela Abbott today. I'm Jason Catrone.
I'm Shelby Rollins.
We'll see you next time on the Vocal Lab podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Vocal Lab podcast. Ready to join the top ranks of the music industry? Don't forget to follow and subscribe for more first-class conversations that make the extraordinary your new ordinary. Until next time, keep striving for your top note.